Welcome to Self Perfected.
Record. Hey, we're back.
All right.
What's up, Mitch?
Hey.
You're back in actually, I don't know if you're in Minnesota or the brick wall behind
I'm on
you.
the street,
where's
man. Can
this?
you tell? Can you tell by my background? I'm
Yes.
hitting the streets. Yeah.
So what's going on? How was the event for you?
It was amazing. Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, a lot of us were in Jefferson, Texas. We took over the town. We were looking like straight up cowboys. We were shooting AK-47. People were milking a cow. I mean, there was a lot that happened. We'll give you all the details later on this call, but it was a blast. How was it for you hosting however many people that was?
It was great. It was a lot of fun. It's always fun when we get together and, like just, obviously you have a structure to an event, right? Even when we would just go to other events that we weren't hosting, you'd participate in the structure. But my favorite part's always just like hanging out, talking with people. And, we were sitting around the fire. I mean, we're sure we'll talk about all that stuff, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Just a little taste of it, everyone. There was a 6-year-old who full on went Oracle mode and just was like reading the future for everybody. And it was and like for real, not like some bullshit. Oh, cool. That's cute. Like actually supporting people. So
it was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. It was cool for people to get to see that and interact with the kids. And then we had other Technotutor kids. It was cool seeing them like play with each other and everything. It was definitely whole nother level. People are not even able to perhaps process, who don't have TT yet. Well, they're not able to process it, but
yeah. But first, in current events, central bank digital currency. Have you heard?
Have you heard about it? I wanted to double check something while we're here. US CBDC digital currency live. I'm gonna see if that's true or not, because somebody sent me a thing
that it's actually live.
But I don't know if how people like they'll make screenshots, but it's like pretend just to like prove a point, as like a marketing technique or whatever. So it was like, it's live, we're live, with the CBDC, but I don't know if that's actually the case. I haven't looked into it. I'm not seeing anything that's saying it is actually live yet.
Okay, well, good. And hey, I mean, I've been seeing those Facebook posts recently where people are like, I disavow Facebook and Meta from using my private information, right? So you guys,
I hereby disavow the use of CBDC
in all caps.
Yes, I hereby disavow is all caps.
Sincerely.
And then thank you with 3 exclamation marks at the end of the letter.
Thank you, Lord, with capital L.
Yes, Jesus, in Jesus' name.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, overlords at the central bank.
I was playing this game with Max last night called Taco Cat. It's one of those little card games they have, whatever. And there was this one part where he was trying to. It's like a game where you're trying to like get the lowest card and all this stuff. And there was this one part he was like waiting for me to play, and he goes, "I'm praying right now," and I go, "What? You're praying?" And he's like, "I'm just kidding." He's like, "Isn't that?" He goes, I was just joking about that shit. And he was like, "Isn't that stuff so stupid, Cameron? Like praying and like God and all that stuff. It's so dumb, right?" It's just so funny, man. This is our 6-year-old card game conversation.
That is awesome. Because think how many kids are just being impulsed with like, hey, we're gonna pray before dinner. We're gonna pray before you go to bed. We're gonna pray for grandma. It's like, and then what do? You sit on your ass all day. I pray to Jesus that he stops the central bank digital currency and the passports. It's like,
I saw this post on Facebook the other day, because people it's Thanksgiving, right? So everyone is in the gratitude thanks mode or whatever. And like this woman was talking about, she was in the supermarket, and I don't remember exactly the details of it, but it was basically like there was some toy that her kid was playing with, and there was another little boy that was there, and he took it and was playing with it, and the dad like gave it back to the girl, and the mom could see like how sad the little boy looked, so she like bought the toy for him. And then there was like another situation, kind of a similar thing she was just talking about, and she was like, life is so beautiful. That was like the point at the end. And I'm like, Yeah, it sounds nice. It sounds really cool. And it's like if everyone was like that, it'd be so great. But it's like, but then you look at the structure upon which you're doing all of this. Like you're in a Walmart or you're in some supermarket, and like what is actually what are the people like, and what are the circumstances like that make that a physical reality? So it's kind of like, it's like when Bernard would talk about the angels, right? And
Mhm.
he's like, they would just be standing there, standing next to the child while the child's being raped, just
Wow.
like observing it, like not helping at all. So like this idea that people have of angels being like these wonderful things that are going to help everybody, and man, who was I? Oh yeah, Vianney was telling me this story about he was doing this presentation for somebody, or it was like at the door or whatever, but he was like, this guy was asking him if they believed in God, right? And so they're going back and forth on it. And the guy was like, you know how I know God is real? And they're like, how? And he goes, because I've seen miracles. And he's like, what? And then the guy was like, some of the story about this baby. Did you hear this story
Yeah.
about the baby? Oh yeah, you were there. And like the baby was like hungry or something, I think it was, and it was like crying. And instead of like scratching its eyes, it did like this instead, which I didn't understand what that means exactly. Why was that occurring? But instead of scratching his eye, he did like this, and that was the miracle. It's like that's the miracle. Like that was all the evidence you needed. That's it. Like not the fact that the baby wasn't hungry in the first place, maybe. And so it's like you look at all of you ignore all of the overwhelming evidence that something isn't the case, and you look for like the little tiny points that emotionally resonate with you, and that somehow becomes the evidence. So it's
Wow.
it's really sad, right? But anyways, it's just
Yeah.
funny because people they going back to the Thanksgiving thing, it's like they're participating in this feeling and then projecting that outward as, isn't life so great? And it's like, because you're feeling that for a moment and you want to amplify it within yourself. So it's like you want to like ramp it up and hype it up inside of you. So it's like, oh, it's so great, and it's like, it's not to say you can't have moments where you feel good about stuff, but that should feel good from the perspective of self-honesty, meaning what you did was actually best and you're somehow experiencing the result of that. But buying a kid a toy, like if I was in a store and someone just bought my kid a toy, I wouldn't appreciate that. Meaning appreciate it in the sense of like, I don't want you to do that. Like, I'm gonna you should talk to me first. What if I don't want them to have that toy? And now you're creating a point where I have to then tell them like they shouldn't have it or whatever the case is. So that wouldn't to me be like oh wow, and actually it's just like a superiority point. Why didn't the dad just buy it? Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, well, but he was poor maybe, so I had to do it for him. And then I saw the joy in the child's eyes, and it's like you're just like exploiting that situation for like energy, And like Katie's been talking a lot about this point of like how that is actually narcissism. Like when you're just going after feelings for yourself, it's actually narcissism.
Wow.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like people think it's like this sort of, they try to make narcissism when you're like aggressive or confident or assertive. So they could tie it to men standing up again to the system. You know what I mean? So it's like you're trying to like get people to be weak. When in reality, it's like an over obsessive focus on how you feel and you experiencing bliss. Like Buddha was the ultimate narcissist, right? Like just sitting
Wow.
under a tree, like trying to let go of all his suffering, not presenting any solution.
It's interesting too because especially with having Aristotle here now, you see how many people want to like be around him, and it's like, oh come on, just I just want to see him and all that. It's like, why? I get that a baby is cute and fun and you want to be around the baby and make the baby smile and stuff. Like I get why, if your starting point was clear, that's why there's select people who have met Aristotle, because it's the beginning of a supportive point. Like Pedro, for example, he's moving himself in the business, he's leading the clubhouses, he's applying himself, and he's been part of me and Jess's relationship for a while, right? He's been like a real friend, I would say. I even use the word friend very specifically there.
Yeah.
But he's aligned in purpose. Well,
That's what I say. That the
say it for
agreement
what
is
it is.
you're in a relationship because you're in agreement on the principle, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so like he has been around us a few times with Aristotle. And it's fun because I know when Pedro's talking, like who he is, how he's resonating, you know, all that stuff, it's going to support him because now he's seeing even more. I got to hurry up and have kids. And then vice versa. Now, Aristotle sees another example of another person who is clear. And but it's like, if someone just wants to be around Aristotle, or like, you know, you got neighbors and stuff like that are just like, oh, the baby. It's like, what the hell? People say the weirdest shit, man.
Dude, look, I know.
we have this chiropractor here, and they're like, hey, you know, you can have your baby come in, we'll just make sure he's good. And if they had to do an adjustment, it's like a very specific thing just for babies.
Yeah.
But this one, because we keep him under a blanket, so no one can even really see him when we're traveling with him. But this one lady said the weirdest shit. She goes, oh, I just want to like take a bite out of you or something. Like, I just want to eat you up. I'm just like, yo, what? And the lady did not, it was like this weird, like 50-year-old lady. I'm like, what the hell did this lady just say?
And that's supposedly
this is
normal.
The world, y'all.
Like, that's supposedly normal. It's like, so explain to me what that means exactly. Why is that? Where's the validity in that statement? I can't see any. You know, there's this whole oh man, I'm gonna look it up real quick. I remember there's this thing where, okay, hold on. What is it called when you want to destroy something innocent? There's like a name for it. Cuteness aggression. That's what it's called.
Cuteness aggression, really?
Cuteness aggression. Why did people? Oh, look at the first point. It's just from Forbes. Why is Forbes? Anyways, why do people joke? It says, why do people joke about wanting to nibble on babies? Damn. Are they cannibals, psychopaths, or do they suffer from something called cute aggression? Well, yes,
they're just a victim. Sorry, my bad. They're just a victim, and we should definitely bend the rules of society to make sure that they feel good.
Studies have long shown that people who view photos of tiny, adorable things often react with extremely aggressive language. Of course, this language does not translate into actual deeds. Just disclaimer, it says. Electoral activity, they serve as a mechanism to prevent people from being overwhelmed and thus incapacitated by cute things. It happens to your brain. It's basically what happens to your brain when you just can't even. There's an article called "It's So Cute I Could Crush It," and they talk about all these points. Yeah, cute animals, baby animals rated significantly higher than other things. We thought that, let me see.
Damn. This is the world system in front of your eyes, folks.
Most languages have a word for this type of feeling. In Filipino, it's called gigil, I don't know how to say it, which means gritting your teeth and trembling in an overwhelming situation. Other studies have shown that cuteness aggression is felt far more acutely when people can't physically touch the cute thing they're seeing. I'm just looking at this. Fascinating, huh?
Everyone, like, you know that idea of the innocence of a child, or like how Jesus says, you know, become like children again. It's like life through as a child is pure innocence, and it's a wonderful thing. But then you see this is like this fucking bastardized way of looking at reality, where then someone would allow their own emotion to then hijack them, where then they would either say some shit that's weird and spiteful or actually act out on it in indirect ways too.
Yeah.
Like this is anti-self-perfection, everybody. Okay.
That is an interesting point though, of why something being cute would overwhelm you. And then the aggression would come from a fear of being incapacitated. Like, it's an unconscious point, obviously, but it's like, it's going to overwhelm you so much. So it's like, you have to exert that aggressiveness somehow. That is like really fucking weird, man. But it's a pattern in everybody. Like, you can see that. Like, it's just like a normal thing people do. It doesn't mean it's best, but yeah, fascinating.
And it's like, it's also just like low processing ability too, right? Because if you can't process that emotion, like, for example, I look at Aristotle, I'm like, wow, you're so adorable. But then I don't, and I see how I could go into the point of like, oh my God, I just hope he stays like a baby forever. And I just want to hold him and take pictures of him.
Yeah.
But then it's like, it's not fucking practical. What would I, if I was Aristotle, what would I want the adults around me doing? I'd want them fucking standing up and preventing the fucking CBDC and passports and shit coming in. I'd want them to make sure that the political situation is good. You know, that's what I would want. So it's like, yeah, I'll have a moment where I'm chilling with him and I'm like, oh, hey, buddy, you know, talking to him. And then, hey, back to work.
You know what? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe all of this dystopian, tyrannical, oppressive stuff that's coming is just because the elite think that everyone in humanity is just so cute. You know, they're just like, humans are just so cute that we just need to oppress. I just want to control everything you purchase.
I just want to crush them.
I just want to make sure you own nothing. You know, you're so cute. I just want to put you on closed circuit television no matter where you go, you know, and filter your speech and not allow you to have any freedom. It's just so cute.
Right. That way we can maintain the cuteness. Right. Wow. And like, okay, what's your take on this too? Because I've seen this pattern come up recently as well with people that aren't in self-perfected or fully grasp the principles here. But it's this pattern of like, whatever you're doing to change the world, keep doing it. Like, we just need more people emanating love and like just positivity. And the more we can just pass on that energy to people, and the more that people are in this like peak experience from that state of excitement and love. And, you know, when you're like high vibration, some people would call it, right? That somehow that automatically means what you're doing is going to add to this greater good. That's a point that we ought to crush, just like the cuteness aggressor wants to crush cute things.
Peak performance is so cute. I just want to stamp on it. Yeah. Okay, so here's my perspective on that. Number one, look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Or Maslow, however you want to say it, right? So you have at the top self-actualization, and at the bottom you have, I don't know, what is it, like food, water, that kind of stuff, right? Okay.
Security, yeah.
Your basic needs, right? So you can't even, if you're like thinking about, you know, I'm going to the next whatever, what's that guy? What's the guy who sat on the park bench and realized that the power of now?
Eckhart Tolle, definitely one of the best humans who's ever lived.
Yeah, you know, I saw him recently. He's talking about like pandemic, and you know, he's like actually questioning stuff. I'm like, I mean, I don't follow him, so I don't know how fully he's questioning. But it seemed like he was like talking about tyranny and stuff coming. And
really,
like,
you know, Deepak Chopra. He's another like classic guy like that. Yeah. He went the other extreme. He was telling people to unfollow him and stop looking at his page if they were against the vaccine, which is fascinating because my guess is that dude has like blackmail held on him because he's got a daughter that's in the industry too, and like he's talking about a limit. Who is I was talking to, I think, to someone in Texas where they're asking about Deepak Chopra and his idea of like limitless mind, limitless body, all this shit. I'm like, dude, if you really had a limitless mind, whatever the fuck you're talking about, why the fuck are you advocating for a vaccine?
Again, it's one of those feel good things that makes you feel powerful. And yeah.
It just makes my mRNA so powerful. It's just so cute. The way the mRNA comes into my body and affects my genetic code is just so cute. Just want to.
Pfizer just thinks we're so cute. Our DNA is so tiny and cute. They just want to fucking invade it and change it. What are we talking about?
Eckhart Tolle is standing up.
Oh yeah. Well, he's standing up on his park bench. It's the power of now. Yeah. So, anyways, side note. Yeah, what were we talking about before that? What was the point?
Oh, about this idea about being in the peak state.
Everyone basic
in
needs.
The peak state, the world would change.
It's like you can't really you can't. If you're thinking about things at that level of like your happiness, your self-actualization, you have your basic needs met. Even if you're like, you have to go to work, at least you have something where you're getting your basic needs met at some level.
Yeah.
You know, and so you're focusing on that only happens when everybody has their needs met. So for the person who's like, if everyone could just be at that level and focus on that, it's like, well, what's preventing everyone from being at that level? first of all, which is, so then what do the people who reach the peak performance do? Do they then go solve the problem for everybody, or do they just go, if everyone could just be where I'm at? But
Right.
you were there because you had your basic needs met. And even if you're like, no, I was sleeping in a van and da 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 da. Yes, but you were able to plug into a system and start competing and start meeting your survival needs, and then start getting money from other people who had their survival. You know, you were utilizing a system to do that. And that system also requires poverty. That system also creates suffering and war and all of these points. Like, who's more at peak performance? Some guy who's like, you know, trying to sell his online course of like how to make money, bullshit thing or whatever, or the fucking CEO of, you know, Boeing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, who's more peak performance? Who's a peak performer? And that guy, his peak performance is weapons. I mean, also they make other things at Boeing, right? But, you know, weapons primary as a big point, right? Or any, like, what's the company that manufactures, like, think about it. There's a company that makes aircraft carriers. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure there's obviously a company that does that. It's not like the government makes them. Jesus. Who makes aircraft carriers? Who makes aircraft carriers? I don't know why my caps lock is on. It's like I'm yelling.
You'll get a different answer from Google if it's all
Check this out. Newport News Shipbuilding, a division of HII, Huntington Ingalls Industries, is the nation's sole designer, builder, and refueler of nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, and one of only 2 shipyards capable of designing it. So it's a company.
Damn.
And then let's see, Huntington Ingalls Industries, the largest military shipbuilding company. It's a spinoff of Northrop Grumman, which makes fighter planes. Ranked 371 on the Fortune 500. It has 3 divisions: the Newport News, Ingalls Shipbuilding, and Mission Technologies. And I guess they're just based in different places. They make all the aircraft carriers. I wonder if there's anything about their, I don't know, they're publicly traded. Oh, HII's 2019 order backlog amounts to $41 billion. Their order backlog.
Oh,
here we go.
Got the holiday catalogs. The kids are like, "Oh, I want to etch a sketch. I want, you know, these."
Sorry,
quotes.
those are out or whatever.
the really elite are just like, okay, I want an aircraft carrier or 2. You know, I definitely want some drones that can shoot missiles.
It says they were only founded 11 years ago, but it was a spinoff of Northrop Grumman's shipbuilding company. And it says their revenue is $9.3 billion in 2020. Their operating income is $800 million. Total assets, a little over $8 billion. Total equity, whatever that was referring to, $1 billion, almost $2 billion. They have 40,000 employees, right? Their CEO is Christopher D. Kastner. So let's see about this guy. I'm interested in who this guy's, what's he's all about. Washington exec. Let's see. Okay, so he's the CEO. Okay, he started as COO, then he became CEO. I'm trying to see if there's anything about the guy. They don't say much about him. It's just more like a, hey, we're welcoming onto the team or whatever. But oh, here we go. Maybe he got a bunch of stock in the company of like $10 million. He makes $4 million. That was when he was executive vice president and CFO at the company. He was making $5 million. So, oh, here we go. Here's his biography. I'm trying to see if there's anything about who he was. He has a BA from University of California, an MBA from Pepperdine. He serves on the board of directors of WHRO, the only public broadcasting station in the United States owned by 19 public schools, and board of trustees for East Virginia Medical School. So when he was executive vice president, he was making $5 million. That's his salary. And it says at that time, there was only 2 people getting paid more. And I guess it's an older article. The CEO of at the time was making $8.5 million a year. So, and they literally make aircraft carriers. And probably they make other stuff too, but that's the point. So peak performance. Are you going to go and tell that guy like, oh, you need to be a peak performer? Like peak performance is this desire to be great. Like what is actual what's peak performance in the context of a tree?
Yeah, it's just the best expression of itself.
What's peak performance for a mother?
Definitely having a job and putting her kids in daycare. I'm just kidding.
But that is what I think actually. Like, oh, they have kids, they have a career, they're the CEO of a company, they've got 5 online businesses, they run a yoga studio. You'd be like, that's a peak performer. And meanwhile, the kids are going to be retarded. Right. It's like literally the peak performance for a mom would be to be totally stable and be there for the kids and help educate them with the father and so forth and create an environment for them. But people think it's like this achievement thing of like greatness, Right. And I understand for a masculine expression for the male, it's like, but what are you, even if you're like, I mean, think about it. The average person who's a peak performer, is Elon Musk a peak performer? What would you say, according to them?
According to a standard person, they'd be like, oh yeah, Elon is definitely a peak performer. He runs, 5 companies, whatever he does.
Bill Gates.
Oh yeah.
Warren Buffett.
Have you seen what he's done with Gavi? Gavi? Google it.
Yeah. Warren Buffett.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Klaus Schwab.
Oh yeah.
Definitely a peak performer. I mean, dude, like if you're saying you're a peak performer and he's not, and you're not in the room telling Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron what to do,
right?
Like what is your performance level? So even just the concept of it, what is the starting point of it? So I never see people who are arguing for peak performance. It's always that because it somehow satisfies them. It's actually like a lack. It's a starting point of lack instead of, okay, I'm going to do my best within the context of what is of creating a system that's best for all. And instead of me trying to be great, although I will be great within the context of what I can do, it's not about greatness. It's about supporting other people and creating a system to do that. So it's not, so the peak performance is all life rather than just the individual. You see what I mean? Because you have all these peak performers right now that are totally fucking everything up and using their peak performance to control other people.
Right. It would be like if all of humanity is a body and then you got the cancer cells are like, hey, let's peak perform. They're like, yeah, fuck yeah. And it's like the cancer is in peak performance right now.
You're like, we're going to replicate so hard right now. Like,
yeah. So yeah, it's that starting point and really having the processing ability to see the second, third, fourth, fifth order consequences of what you're doing. Because yeah, if you're a peak performer and you're just focused on whatever it is that's right in front of you, it's like you're failing to see that we're in a system that's still based in lack. It's still based in scarcity, right? And we got all this other shit that's being implemented or introduced, such as the passports, the CBDC, the whole agendas with how they're indoctrinating kids nowadays. And it's like, let's say you're the ultimate peak performer at e-commerce or you flip Airbnbs or whatever. It's like, who fucking cares? Because what world are you leaving for your kids?
Yeah, and what happens? What happens when you die and you face consequence? And no one wants to look at that point because it's like, oh, I don't care.
God will reward me in heaven.
Like Max was trying to sell someone the other day, and and he was like, so do you believe in, he said, do you believe, or no, he goes, do you want to exist after you die? And they were
Mm.
like, oh, I don't care. I've had a pretty good run. Like, I don't really care, right? Right. Like trying to like, oh, it's like, you can't get me, kid. But then later Max was like, do you believe in God? And they were like, yeah. And they were like, well, I've been in war. Have you ever been in war? And Max was like, no. And the guy was like, well, if you've been in war, you'd believe in God 100%. And Max looked at him and was like, I would never be in war. But then we were talking about it later, and it was like, yeah, hold on. You said you don't care about what happens when you die, but you believe in God. Why would you believe in God?
Right. Because deep down you're afraid what happens when you die, and you hope.
Right. Because why did you believe in God? Because you went to war. Certainly it wasn't what you saw in war that was like, clearly God exists. Like that was not it. Clearly there was some sort of,
it's a fear of death.
yeah, like the only way I can get through this, because this is so horrendous, is if God protects me, or if there is a God or something, or I can get through, or whatever. Clearly, I mean, anyone can understand that that's the mindset of it. It's not like you're special because you were there. But then trying to say also you don't care about what happens when you die. And it was cool because the guy says, like, I don't, I've had because Max was like, you have to do what's best in the world. And the guy was like, well, I've had a pretty good impact, like, and Max goes, I'm only 6 years old and I've had more of an impact than you. Right. I'm serious. This is what he said. I was just like observing the conversation. Right. And it was funny because the guy kept going on about, like, well, something, just same kind of stuff. And Max goes, remember that story I told? I don't know if I told it on the podcast, but I know I've told it to you and on the other meetings, like where he was talking with that 6-year-old woman about God, right?
Yeah.
Now, and she was just like not processing what he was saying. He was talking to this guy. He goes, you sound just like my 60-year-old aunt. And the guy is like, whoa, hold on there, buddy. Like now you're not going to sell me if you're saying things like that, because if I hear you saying I sound like a 60-year-old woman, like I'm just going to shut down. Right. And Max was like, I'm not saying you're like her. I'm saying you're talking like her. The things you're saying are like what she said. But the guy couldn't like process that. Right. And it was funny.
Yeah.
But it was cool afterwards because we were talking about it. And I'm like, I was showing Max, like, this is not an excuse not to persuade people, but some people are not, they're making a choice within themselves. Are they going to be a part of changing the system, or are they not? Doesn't mean we have to give up on trying to persuade them, but that's where they're at. Because there are some people you meet where they're like, hey, I'm interested. They may not have any clue what to do, but they're like, I want to. And then you have other people who are just like going about life, and it's just, everything's fine. No problem. It's all good. And even if you talk about negative stuff, they're like, it's okay. Like they don't care. They actually don't care. They're just following a program. There's no spark of life of like, hey, if there's any problem anywhere in reality, like that should be my purpose. Like if I can find any point of self-responsibility in it, and the self-honesty of I'm only where I'm at because I participated in an abusive system. Does that mean you stop participating? No, it just means you start participating in a way that solves the problem. And that's what we're talking about. So like with the peak performers, and this person that Max was talking to was, I would think most people, if they knew him, would consider him a certain level a peak performer, or at least relatively in that space of things, right? Because they're wealthy, they've done a lot, they are at high levels and so forth, right? And Max is sitting there having this back and forth with this person. You probably know who I'm talking about, right? And yeah. And it was funny because then the guy's like getting offended, and it's like, wait, you're getting offended by a 6-year-old. Right? And it's fascinating because you could see this person is not going to, at least now, right, the moment, they would unconsciously, subconsciously do things with their kids to prevent them from being like Max. Even though they would think that they want that. They would think they would want a child who's like very assertive, confident, can persuade. But if you're going to say like, oh, I don't really care what happens when I die, how are you, and there's nothing needs to change in this world. It's just about making money and so forth. Like, how are you going to guide your child in what their purpose should be?
Right.
Especially considering everything that's being created right now. Like we talked about the CBDC, the Great Reset, all this stuff. Like, do you realize the legacy of reality that you're leaving for your children if you don't direct it? And then you're just going to be like, I had a good run. Good luck. See you later. have fun, try it. You try to survive now, and
Right.
like, I sent you this video. I know you haven't had time to watch it, but this, I put it in, I think I just put it in the distributors page. Maybe we can put it somewhere people can see it, but it was called This Pivotal Moment. And there's 2 videos right now on this channel. And I found out about it because, I was watching Dark Horse, like a clip from Dark Horse podcast with Heather and Brett Weinstein, whatever. I don't know if Heather's last name was Weinstein, but whatever. And just talking about, it was a video where the first one, they were talking about the vaccine passports and the purpose of the vaccine passports and what the purpose was from the big picture of introducing those. And then the second point, you mentioned Gavi, right? That's like part of that whole thing. And then the second video is more going into the central bank digital currencies and what's the purpose of that. And it was really, it's a really good video. I've watched like maybe 10 minutes of it, but you can already see where it's going. It's reiterating just a lot of stuff we've been saying, but it's really well produced and really emphasizing the point of where we're at with all of these things coming is like a shift in humanity, a shift in human society, like a fundamental shift to, it's like stamping out the last little bits of individuality, freedom, anything, and they were talking about the point of, okay, you'll have freedom to do things that you want as long as you're completely obedient to what the system wants you to do. So you'll have freedom in that. It's kind of like, imagine if I was like, you have total freedom because you have cable TV and you can watch any show you want. That seems like freedom, but there's nothing you're going to watch on there that's talking about what's best.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? There's nothing that's going to empower you to be creative or anything like that. It's just entertainment. So you're free within the starting point of just being entertained. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the point they were making, is just, you're going to have freedom of choice as long as you comply. And the other point that Brett Weinstein made, which is pretty good, is the central bank digital currency, which, if people don't understand what that is, it's just using like crypto type currency, digital currency, to replace cash, so that everything 100% is electronic, which it already is like that to a large degree, but it allows them more control over what you can or can't do, and the ability to shut you off, just like you can be shut off from social media. So you like have zero voice basically from that perspective, right? So and then but his point was, it's like a way of just skipping, it's a way of getting right to social credit by skipping any sort of like actual having to implement social credit. It's like, you've just got it now because you have a digital currency which can be shut on or off under any arbitrary measurement. And that whole ESG thing, remember we talked about that before. I saw something, I didn't really go into all the details of it, but they were talking about Tesla, and it was like, I don't know what company, BlackRock type, Sequoia type company, that was, or maybe it wasn't even one of them. It was just some financial company saying, giving Tesla a really low rating. And they were like, because the way they treat their employees, and also, I forget what the details were exactly as to why they were giving them the low rating. I'm like, but they're already implementing it and utilizing it.
Wow.
To say like, oh, they shouldn't receive funding, or this is a risky investment because they're ESG, even though like maybe their other numbers are good. They're like, yeah, but that's not all we're looking at. When we look at the big picture of ESG, it paints a different picture. So it's like, I could just make up shit of like, what are the criteria of ESG? It's like, they're going to add in, I mean, how many Black people are on their board, things like that.
Right.
Like anyone gives a shit when they're buying a electric car. It's like, does it work properly? I'm not endorsing Tesla. I'm just saying, you want it to be a certain thing that you're buying, and you don't care about all this other aspect. And then that all the other things like the green agenda, all that stuff is just a fucking scam anyway. So it's just a way of manipulating everyone into falling in line with whatever the next, basically download into everybody's mind is. Everyone goes along with it on the same page. No one questions it. Right. Which is what the whole reason hate speech was introduced for, is so you won't speak against things that they don't want you to speak about.
So there's a really cool interview. It was in EQuoF. I forgot what it was called or where it was, but they're talking about how there's like two different types of beings. I mean, all beings are equal at baseline, but like what they found is that there's the being that sees, let's call it being A, is the one that goes, hey, I'm here and I'm going to create the best outcome for myself and all the other beings. It's like this acknowledgement that I'm part of this greater thing. And then the other being B, is like shut off and they're like, I don't care. And so what I really am seeing what self-perfected is and what TechnoTutor is it is the pool where all the being A's will come to, and we can all work together to implement the system, because it's not that hard to do. I mean, it's, yes, there will be challenges and we'll be working on it for years and years to come. Yet, when you get enough people that are all in alignment and doing the right activity, it's like we will create the best system out of this.
Dude,
it's how much more pain do we want to go through?
How many people right now are being programmed not to have kids and not be in relationships?
Yeah.
You see like everything declining, right? So over here, you're getting a bunch of people where it's like, how do you want the group to grow? Okay, everyone have 2 kids. Now it's doubled, or 3 kids or 4 kids, whatever. You see my point then. It's like now you've doubled everything just by having everyone having 4 kids.
Right.
So that group is going inevitably to grow even beyond the group, the A beings who initially are seeing the point they can replicate, because then they're going to take the responsibility of educating their kids. And then these kids are going to be so much more effective. I mean, like I was saying, here's my 6-year-old son having a conversation with a 48-year-old serial entrepreneur. Do you know what I mean? Who's made money, who's been in the system, who's done a lot of things, been at high levels in the government apparatus, all that stuff. And Max is like able to hold its own with this person and get the other person emotional. And Max is just like, whatever, you know, but he could see at a certain point, okay, I'm not getting through to this person. Okay, I mean, move on. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So then
how do you balance that?
What do you mean?
I think this would be cool for people to hear, because we have more and more people in Self-Perfected that are really standing up, speaking out, sharing. And it's like, at what point do you let it go with someone, like someone who refuses to change, right? Because it's like, if you have someone like that where he's like, I don't care, you know, I do believe in God, and I'm not going to change. Like there's like a sweet spot, like an equilibrium moment where you're like, okay, you know what, let him go for now, and then realize in a year you'll see him again, or 6 months you'll see him again. Like, how do you balance that point?
I don't really look at it from the perspective of it's not like an active push the person away. It's just like, if they're going to be in my environment, then I'm going to be persuading them. I'm still going to be talking about what I'm talking about. I'm not going to change myself according to them. And I mean, there is like, I guess I see your point though. It's kind of like a balance, but at the same time, it's like, sometimes you have to allow a person to have the space to see what their point that they're missing is, or their pain, or their whatever, so then they can come to you. So sometimes it's not that you're necessarily actively persuading, it's just you're standing very clearly within who you are, and everything is coming from that starting point. So any question they would ask, any interaction, it's like, okay, how can I mean, it's not you're not doing anything special. It's just you're not changing yourself to fit into their thing.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's also a part of the process that we're all in, is learning how to do that more and more and more and more. Whereas Max just does it all the time.
Yeah.
He doesn't care if you agree or not. And a lot of people, I think they only want to talk to people if they agree already. You know, and so they don't want the conflict. There's a fear of conflict. You know, but I notice with like a lot of the people who are very certain that they don't want to change, they don't even have that fear of conflict. They're willing to just hold on to their point of not changing, even if you don't care, even if you don't agree. Right. So it's like, allow there to be conflict and just look at each moment. There's no general advice you can give. It's just like, you have to look practically with common sense in the moment. Is this a point to push right now? Can the person hear me or not? Or do I just let it go and let them see for themselves? It just depends on the situation. But really, it's just a matter of when you see yourself being weak with somebody and compromising, take note of that and then ask yourself, okay, where are the points within me that I'm participating in something that's where I'm still doing that? Because we're all going to go through that process of like more and more challenging those points within ourselves. And sometimes it's like you'll feel totally certain, stable, no one can move you. And then you meet somebody where they're very certain in their whatever, and you feel yourself shifting or kind of being swayed a little bit. And then it's like, okay, why is that occurring?
Mhm.
Instead of going into doubt, just be like, okay, why am I allowing that? What was the point they were resonating that I was resonating with? You know, it's like if you were to go meet a celebrity and then suddenly you feel all nervous and weak, like why? So you start looking at where's the pattern of feeling inferior and so forth, because like they don't feel that way about you. And yet, if I bet you there's people where Tony Robbins, just thinking of like a celebrity person, where somebody would think of him as like some like, oh wow, this guy, or like somebody people would look up to, right? But then I'm sure there's situations where he would go around certain people and feel like, I mean, does he have a favorite rock band? I'm sure,
Probably.
right? And I'm
Yeah.
sure if he went and got to like meet them, he'd be like, oh my God, like, whoa, you know, like it's resonance. It's not a, oh, I'm just the best ever and I don't care. It's like resonance, right? And maybe there's some
Mhm.
people who their programming is so specific that they don't feel that about anybody else. I don't know who that would be. You know, Trump strikes me as one of those people who's kind of like, I'm the best. I don't give a fuck. Like, you know what I mean? Like maybe I don't know him. So maybe there are people he might not resonate that way with. I don't know. But and again, it's not about us having to necessarily get to the point of I'm better than everybody and no one can sway me or anything. It's about being consistent and supporting other people. Because what if it takes you, what if you looked at, it's like, okay, if you were like, oh, somebody was telling me, I was talking with Keith and he was talking about some of these architecture projects, you know, like it takes like maybe a year to build a house or whatever, right? But he said there's like hospital projects where it can take like 15 years and stuff, you know, and he said like architects will come onto the project and then they typically only stay on a project for 2 to 3 years on average or whatever it was. So you'll have, so they want to, then they'll go to a different project. So on that project, it's not even the same person from start to finish. It's like multiple different groups of people and teams and so forth. And so how long does it take to build a hospital? Well, how long does it take you to get to a point where no one can influence you? Maybe it takes you 50 years, but you're already 40. So if you're thinking, well, I just have to get to the point, my focus is to get to the point where no one can influence me. Why not get to the point where you could just influence another person and support them and then get to another person to support them and not try to think of it as you being so amazing, going back to the peak performance thing. Why focus on it as your peak performance? Because what's the measurement? How do you know when you're at peak performance? Can you be at peak performance and be abusive? Like, think about some like super fucking effective, self-disciplined serial killer.
Yeah.
You know, who like has a pristine apartment, you know, like they drive a nice car, they're always impeccably dressed, you know, they have like a skin care regimen, you know. I'm thinking like American Psycho. That's actually what I'm thinking of. You know what I mean? Like that guy was like a peak performer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, making
Good
lots of
starting
money,
point, yeah.
whatever, right? So, but he was also really good at this other thing that's not best, right? So, or like, what's that movie? What's that one with it's like Wall Street? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, with that guy Gordon Gekko.
Yeah. That's the one I'm thinking.
Yeah.
It's called Wall Street, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I just think about those people, like they're peak performers, like, but they're not doing anything that's best. It's just they're really focused and driven and disciplined within that point. So the idea of peak performance is sort of, it's kind of like the idea of being an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
You know, where it's like this lifestyle sort of self-image that people are buying into. Whereas rather than, and then the question is, what's your starting point of why you're buying into that image? Why do you need to have a self-image? You know, what's more important? You know, it's like interesting, like with Bernard, for example, it was like not until like right before he died that there was even any pictures of him anywhere.
Wow.
And he didn't take those pictures. It was like some people at the farm like took them and put them on some of the videos and stuff. And like he wasn't like I knew him, like he wasn't doing it from the perspective of how great he was and like self-image and all that stuff. It was like, I need to get my message out there to support people because we have to change things. That was the point. So it doesn't mean that there's no room for the peak performance if that's a preference the person has as a way of expressing themselves, but they really just need to check what's the starting point of why they're doing it. So I'm not saying you can't be a peak performer. I'm just saying, what's the starting point? Check that and focus on that point. Because I guarantee you, if you want to get to real peak performance and push yourself as far as you possibly can, this is the way to do it.
Right.
Like this process will test you. Are you really a peak performer? Do you really have self-discipline, or are you just talking? And is it just where your programming makes it easy? You know?
Right. Because that's really what this process is it's checking every last point within you. And it doesn't mean you need to have it all perfect in order to get results and we can work on changing the system. It's just, yeah, that is really taking this to the utmost, is every last point, every last memory, every last feeling.
Yeah. You don't have to be perfect to get started and start having an impact, but don't use that as an excuse of, well, I don't need to be perfect then. It's like the self-perfection is within the starting point. It's within the daily thing you're doing. It's within, am I pushing myself? It's not within only the finished result.
Yes. Yeah.
Some people talk about self-perfection. I remember people would like react to it. Like, oh, you just acted like you act like you're already perfect. It's like, how am I acting like that? In what way am I acting like I'm already perfect? Well, you call it self-perfected. It's like, so again, so am I acting like it, or is it just the word you're reacting to? It's like reacting like you're already done. I'm like, where in the word does it say it's already done? Because it's past tense. It's like, okay, in each moment, were you doing what was best? Yes. Where was there self-perfection in that moment? That it doesn't carry over moment to moment. The only thing that carries over moment to moment is the consequence you've created or the result you've created that accumulates. It's not the, oh, I'm so great and amazing, I'm done, I'm perfect now. It's like, if you really are, you'll continue to do the things that are best. So it's just the way I look at self-perfection in that context would just be, is it automated within you that you'll never choose otherwise? That would be the self-perfection. It's not a self-image point. It's a responsibility point. Right. What?
Dude, I'm excited for 2023. I know we got some good stuff in store.
Yeah.
About to blow up to the next level.
I know you just want to tell everybody. You just want to spill those beans, don't you?
I know, but I won't. I'll hold back.
November 27th. Pretty soon you can spill all the beans. We have some really cool stuff that are in the works.
Yes.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that event too was unlike anything I've been to. I mean,
how so?
I've been to a lot of stuff in the past. I've spent a lot of money getting to events and going places and hanging out in rural Texas in a Western town and on the ranch and just all around there was very cool, because you see the result of the process of people taking on the process for themselves, for real, questioning themselves. In times where I just enter a new room and there's already 12 people talking about stuff, I'm like, wow, like this is great, people get it. And then the result of that is then we all go back, we make more money, we take more responsibility, we improve our relationships. 2 different couples got engaged. Like, shout out Josiah and Maddie, shout out Evan and Aaliyah. I mean, and now I'm sure by the next event they'll be having kids, or at least right on track for it. And so the group keeps
Remember
growing.
Last event we had people get together that now have kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you see the whole point. What events do you go to where that happens?
Seriously. And where it's like, the next time around they'll be there.
Right.
And then your kids and their kids will be friends. And then they'll start working on things together. They already are working on things together. Like how you see Ben and Seneca and Arya and Atticus, all these kids. It's so great because we're solid in it. It's like to build something that lasts the test of time. There is a testing period. There's like the fire, right? And the impurities get burned away, but what's pure and what's true stays. And now that is in all of the core people. So we're ready to go to the scaling.
Dude, it's very fun to see.
I've been part of teams. Yeah. Let's hear it.
Here's the real firewalk. Okay. It's not a you stand around on nice soft ground, and then you walk through a fire for a few minutes. Okay. You're standing on fire, and then briefly you can walk on some nice soft carpet. But will you go back to the fire and stand there as long as you need to?
Yeah.
Not just retreat to the soft carpet.
Wow.
Because that's the reality of it. Will you go back? Because like this was a nice soft carpet, everyone's hanging out, we're having fun, but now you go back and now it's time to build. It's time to grow even more. It's pushing things to the next level. Sometimes you need to have that relaxing point, and that kind of gives you some space out of your normal routine to reconsider things and push yourself and really get some self-honesty and get support from other people. But then it's like, now what do you do? And I mean, not that we need to go into details, but we've already seen significant changes within people and results and so forth of how they're able to now share with others. So that's been pretty cool too. So the events are not just to get together and hang out, although again, it's kind of like the peak performance thing. I'm not saying you can't be a peak performer. It's just the starting point of it. It's not that you can't have get-togethers and fun and things like that. It's just what's the starting point of it. So the starting point always for all of us is to support each other to go to that next point of what is best and expand and create more. Right.
Yeah, and to see what's possible. Like I know JJ and Pedro had a 2.5-hour conversation with Max. They were playing with clay, or I don't know, they're making some pottery thing. I don't know. Max was just showing them some of the stuff he does for fun. And they had a full 2.5-hour conversation where both Pedro and JJ afterwards came up to me like, dude, I thoroughly enjoyed that. You know, most people are like, oh, I'll talk to the kid for a little bit just to be pleasant and whatever, you know, get my fix up. Ooh, cute kid, right? But this was actually supportive because Max was telling JJ how he's like glad that he has you and Katie as parents. And how JJ and Pedro are saying, look, our parents didn't have TT. So that's why we have all this consequence, right? Because we weren't educated properly. We didn't have principles, but now they're adopting them. And Max was saying how he's like, yeah, if I would have been born in a different body, like I would have needed to program TT. But that would have been very hard because I learned programming because I used TT. So it was this really interesting level of conversation they were able to have. And that kind of stuff too. Like, it's not that you need to have those conversations because you can just hear this and, you know, see the obviousness of why it's valuable. And, you know, every once in a while, it's pretty damn nice to have that where you hang out with the people in person for real, get the support, level up together. And I look forward to a lot more of this. You know,
you want to talk about like around the fire that night? Maybe share some of your perspective on that.
Oh yeah. So like, okay, imagine this, right? We've all, I'm sure, most of us listening to this have had the idea of like a bonfire, and you're hanging out with friends and that kind of stuff. There's music and all that, but we're at Cameron's property, and it's maybe 20 of us in a circle, and we're chatting and everything. And then at one point, it all like locked in, and Cameron and Max had brought up this point, and we went around the circle and said, okay, what's the greatest fear you're facing right now, or what's the fear that's kind of lingering in your mind? And everyone shared, and then and it was so cool because then in that moment, it was like the side conversation stopped. No one had their phone out. No one was trying to, oh, let me put it on Snapchat. It was just like, we're all here and we're present. We're with each other. And
just for context real quick, like when we went around, because I just started asking about like, what's your greatest fear? And John Tran said, my greatest fear right now is, getting to the point of death, and I haven't really done what is best, right? Mm-hmm. And Max wasn't even paying attention much to the conversation at that point, or maybe he was a little bit, but he was kind of going in and out. And I said, Max, come here. I was like, tell him your fear again. And then John said it, right? And Max goes, oh, that's I'm walking through the same point. Right. And then apparently later, I wasn't there for this, but apparently later he was clarifying with somebody. He was like, I'm not really afraid of he said it's not really not existing that I'm afraid of in terms of death. He said, my concern is that I would be born into another body and the parents don't have techno tutor. I was like, and someone told me about this. I'm like, holy shit, man. Like the way it's processing. Yeah. So anyways, go ahead. I just wanted to add that point in.
Yeah. And so then Max at one point took a chair, pulled it aside, so a little bit off from the fire, maybe 20 feet away or something. And he goes, okay, if you had the fear of death, come over here. Or he's like, who had the fear of death? And, the people raise their hand were self-honest about that fear. Right. And then, we walk over and Max was just sharing his perspective on things. And it was so coherent. Like there was one where he was saying, because some people had the fear of rejection, like of standing up, speaking out, and then being rejected by other people. Like friends, family, whatever, right? Friends, I'll say in air quotes. And Max said, hey, look, so when you're participating in that fear of rejection,
I'll show it while you're talking.
Yeah. Check that out.
It's got to focus.
So Max was saying, okay, look, when you're participating in that fear of rejection, who are you? You're your ego. You're just participating in the fear. So Max is like, in that moment, instead of participating in a fear of rejection, he's like, just reject your ego and just do what's best. And it was so cool because, I mean, I even found myself taking some notes of stuff to put through my TT. John's like typing up a storm. He's like, oh, Max, say that again. But actually, it was like so cool because we were able to look at these things that, are pretty big things to look at, like fear of death, fear of rejection, fear of, let's say, running out of money, fear of whatever. I mean, there's probably 5 or 6 different things. And that was unlike anything else I've seen, because it literally has not happened before that a 6-year-old that has high vocabulary and principle is able to then direct and facilitate a conversation, where then now all of us are able to look at it and it was a coherent answer. And then we took it on. And it's like, I've been applying that ever since, where I have that moment of the ego going, oh, just do this. Like, no, reject that. Just do what's best. And and do you
remember when he was
the vision?
I don't remember if we were outside. It was the night before, I think. And he wanted to go inside and play a game. Remember that? It was definitely a different night, but I remember you were there. It was like just some of the guys who were sitting around the fire. And Max was like, who wants to go inside and play this game? And people were like, nah, I don't really want to do that right now. We just want to talk. And like, we understand people want to talk and everything, right? But he kept like asking. And we were like, Max, like, they don't really know what the game is. Like, can you describe it or tell them a story about it? So he was like trying to then, oh yeah, it's going to be fun. And he was like getting all this points. And then he was like, all right, who wants to do it? Raise your hand. And then like one person raised their hand and then somebody else raised their hand. And finally he's like, gets everybody to agree. And but he kept persisting. Like, it was like 30 minutes. I don't even know, maybe more, of like him constantly. And then we all went inside. Okay, we'll do it. But then nobody had eaten. Most of you guys had just gotten there and just went out to the fire. So then y'all wanted to eat. So then he was still going around while people were eating, being like, come on over here. Right. Fine. And then finally he got everyone to sit down and start playing the game. And then like everybody was into it. You know what I mean? It was that throw burrito game. And like everybody was playing, like throwing the burritos, running, taking it seriously. Right. Yeah. And it was just cool because it's like Max created that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just really cool to see that. And then I was explaining to him, I'm like, see how we have this event here. And we've created this in the sense of we've put the platform together for everyone to be here and to get this support and everything. Like, so when you're creating, you can create from that starting point of what is best. And then it supports people. Like, you can actually create stuff, right? So imagine being at that age, getting that level of education and being allowed to persuade people and just all of those points is, I mean, imagine when he's an adult, say like, imagine when he's 12 or 15, but imagine when he's an adult, like what he will be able to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the real deal what we're doing. And it's the most fun thing too. It's like that feeling of peak performance, or the feeling of like, wow, this like feels great. And I feel grateful. It's like, I actually have that for real because I know it's based in something real.
Yeah, you're right. If people search for the peak performance and they think that it's in the activity, but it's really within the starting point and being self-honest and constantly rejecting the ego and holding yourself to it. And the result you create from that. Like, doing the thing is not always fun. You know what I mean? Going to the gym and getting there is not always fun, but it's the result that you're after, right? So we actually have the result of feeling satisfied, feeling really good, like fulfilling your purpose. It's interesting you say that, because it's like, it's the actual real thing everyone is after. We have that. And it's not like we have it for you, like you come to me and I'll give it to you. It's just like, by doing the point altogether. And then it amplifies even more the more people, because you start to see even bigger results. You see more impact that adds to the point. So it's an always increasing point. But even, I mean,
Yeah.
really think about all the peak performers. None of them are actually peak performers. They're not actually hitting that point.
Right.
They're just keeping themselves busy trying to search for that point. We already have it.
Right.
And so once
It's
you
like,
have it and you're certain, then you can start giving from that starting point.
yeah, because I look at for example, like we have our local clubhouse here that we run. It's with Self Perfected, and we talk about the principles. And at that clubhouse, we have had relationships form from it where they're now married and they have a kid. And we have other people elsewhere that then do the same thing. And like it's like then they get the same result where then they host a clubhouse, they get people to come to it, and then now other couples, and now these kids have techno tutor. So it's like literally this is what changing the system looks like, is you just find that next person, persuade them, the next person, persuade them, and then you plug them into the system, and then it just keeps replicating. And it's so cool because when you look at the fact that there's a couple that's together now, there's a baby that's here, there's a family that's saved their marriage, and now their kids are actually being effective, and it's like they're having more fun and everything, and they're doing the same for others. That is a really good feeling. But we don't do it because it's going to feel good. It's just feeling good as a natural result of it. And it's amazing because wow, we're actually getting the result. And it's the best thing ever. Literally.
It's maybe we can end on this point, because I know we both have to do other points, but like I'm looking at that background you have there, the brick wall, and it's literally you start laying the bricks. And I know there's process, you put the mortar and all that stuff, but it's like you're literally putting the bricks, and you don't go, why don't I have a whole brick wall yet? It's like, just keep putting the bricks in.
Yes.
And then as you do that, you have a structure. It's like, like the gun range, right? Like we built that gun range while everyone was here, or as people were arriving, we finished it. And Keith and I put the roof on the other day, and it's like, now that we had it, there was a place for people to go to. And it was a different experience, which I knew was going to be that, but it was a different experience than just going out in the backyard and shooting. It's like you have a structure. So it takes time. You have to put the pieces together. You have to build it. But then when you have a structure, it creates like a whole nother space, and you don't really get it until it's created. So it's the same thing with the brick wall. It's the same thing with what we're doing with our lives. Our purpose is we're putting the bricks.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like the result is there yet. Of course not, because the result is when it's done. But if you're like, well, no, I want the result now. Come on. That's what the peak performers are doing. They're thinking they're just going to do something, and that's going to give them the feelings they want. And it's like, no, what's the starting point, and therefore the result of what you're doing? And if you have a clear starting point and a clear purpose that's best, you'll feel good. You'll also feel bad, but not any worse than you already felt. Meaning you'll go through energetic phases. The less you participate, the less you'll deal with the bad shit. Like that's the reality of it. The more you participate in the highs, you're going to get lows. So stop participating in that. Focus on principle and create from that starting point. The only way to do that is what we're doing. There can't be two ways to do it. There can't be two ways to change the world. Like there's only two ways right now. There's our way, or there's the WF way, the Great Reset. Those are your alternatives. They can't both happen.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're thinking, I don't want to do it your way, I don't want to follow, it's like, well, then you're going to go the other way, because the other way is all the people who don't want to actually stand up and actually change things. You have no power. It's just going to be created for you and controlled for you. So the only other way is to stand up in principles that are best for all. And at the bottom, at the end of the day, it's educating each person that you meet into walking the process of standing up and changing. Because when that's done, and we have then at the point where we can create systems that are not like this WEF bullshit where it's like just control you. It's systems just to support you, systems to make it easier for you to focus on what matters. Like imagine the person who every day all they can focus on is survival. They need their basic needs taken care of as a given, so they can then focus on educating themselves. We're not at that stage yet. So don't go, well, I need to help that person now. If you try to do that, the only thing that's going to happen is the Great Reset is going to happen, because they're already directing it. They're already doing it. And who already has the fucking mass influence? So who's the poor person going to turn to right now? You see what I mean? They're going to turn to them because they're promising them that. We're not here saying, oh, you're going to own nothing. We're saying we're going to take care of your basic needs. We, meaning collectively, we're going to sort out that problem and make it done so that people can then have the time and the space freed up so they can then actually educate themselves. But now what we're looking for, I guess technically, is the peak performers. You know what I mean? Like, which is the new 1%. Doesn't mean you're already a peak performer. It's like you actually want to perform at the level of taking as much responsibility as possible and getting to the point of changing the system so that then everybody else can be supported. That's the end of the day. So what else do you want to add? Anything?
Just join us. I mean, we're on every Friday for the hangout, get to meet the community. Keeps growing. If you haven't been to a local clubhouse, like reach out, we can plug you in because we're in cities all around the world. And then share this, but not from a point of, okay, great, Mitch and Cam can do the selling. Like take it on for yourself and then use the material to support when you're now selling the next person on the next point, which is standing up, taking responsibility, living the principles, using TechnoTutor with self-honesty, doing the process, that whole thing. So then we'll be back on with the podcast next week. So stay plugged in, y'all.
See ya.